I haven't been mad online in a long time. Some would say it's been too long since Joe Mullinax has had a good old-fashioned rant. And I've got some news for you. Damichael Cole is back, and he's angry too. We're going to be mad together about Taylor Jenkins being ranked 17th in the NBA by CBS Sports. What a bunch of nonsense. This is Locked On Grizzlies. We got to lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is indeed a Mad Online Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax. The gentleman shaking his head on my side there is Damichael Cole, my co-host of Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He's the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Follow him on X at Damichael C. Follow me on X at Joe Mullinax. And follow along, dear listener, dear viewer, as Damichael and I yell at Sam Quinn of CBS Sports and talk about other topics Grizzlies related here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out at Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Subscribe both on YouTube and in the audio arena as well. Take Damichael and I with you wherever you go. All right, now, before we get to Mad Online, Damichael, I do want to say that Sam Quinn, who wrote this article on CBS Sports, is somebody that I think has been a follower of me for some time. Again, I've been covering the Grizzlies for over a decade now. I think I've had Sam on previous podcasts back in my GBB Live days. You mentioned that he follows you as well in our prep for this show. So I like Sam Quinn, okay? And maybe, again, every time I feel like we yell at people on here, we invite them on the show, we probably need to extend Sam the same courtesy. Whew. So Sam, in fairness to Sam, again, I'm trying to be fair. This is the time of year before training camp starts that everybody comes out with their lists. Right?
Everybody's coming out with their lists. Yeah.
We're content creators, right? You create more content at this point, Damichael, than I do. You understand the grind of this time of year before training camp opens. You got to get stuff out. That kind of is what this feels like. But tier 6, middle of the road for coaches in the NBA. Taylor Jenkins is ranked number 17. Quinn Snyder and Mike Malone. Yes, that Mike Malone.
Mike Malone, the guy just won a championship.
Yeah, like a year or so ago, Mike Malone won a championship. Taylor Jenkins is considered the 17th best coach in the NBA. Here are some names that are ahead of Taylor Jenkins. Greg Popovich, who has Victor Wembanyama.
Is this 2014? This list
has Victor Wembanyama because of how terrible the team has been recently. You also have names like Mike Brown of the Sacramento Kings.
This is 2010? This is 2010?
Were the Kings the 2 seed in the Western Conference the last couple of years? Mike Budenholzer, who was literally unemployed. He did not have a job. He was fired in the National Basketball Association.
who had a 1 seed a couple years ago, right? And lost in the first round.
Lost in the first round, right? Mike Budenholzer is number 9. Okay. Ime Udoka is number 8. What has Ime Udoka won with the Houston Rockets recently? Not a ton. Certainly not as much as Taylor Jenkins has won with the Memphis Grizzlies. The one that really sticks in my craw
here it
is Will Hardy of the Utah Jazz. Will Hardy.
What number is he?
Jazz. He is number 8 on this list. Number 7. He's number 7 on this list.
In the NBA? Not in the West. Not in the
NBA. In the entire NBA, this man is the number 7 coach in the National Basketball Association.
So Will Hardy, am I missing something, Joe? Does he have a playoff series win or?
Will Hardy's record with the Utah Jazz, okay? He has been a coach for 2 years in the Western Conference. 2 years. The Utah Jazz in his first year were 37-45.
Below 500.
Missed the playoffs.
Missed playoffs.
The Utah Jazz in their second season, 31-51 under Will Hardy, missed the playoffs. He has a
so missed the play-in too, right?
Correct. Not even play-in teams. Career record of 68-96. And this man is the number 7 basketball coach.
One of the best in the
business.
business.
In the entire National Basketball Association. Damichael, in our prep for the episode, the one number that we agreed with him on was putting Eric Spoelstra number 1 of the Miami Heat. I don't think anybody that follows the NBA semi-closely, right? And again, you follow it much closer than me. I follow it pretty closely. This is your literal job. People that are somewhat tuned in and beyond are going to tip their cap to Eric Spoelstra.
A lot of respect for him.
Yeah. That dude is the best in the NBA. But Will Hardy at 7? Taylor Jenkins at 17?
What's the argument?
Unbelievable.
What did he say, Joe? Can you read it? What did he say about Will Hardy? And then tell me. I'm missing something because
he's calling Will Hardy a wonderkind.
It's that stereotype where he's the guru who can draw up all the fancy nice stuff, all that type of stuff.
Exactly.
And
the past 2 Utah Jazz seasons have been the story of a coach preventing a general manager from tanking. LOL. Seriously?
So basically the Jazz are a playoff team if Will Hardy wants to be. Apparently.
That's what he's making it sound like in this piece.
There's some double. This doesn't add up to me because if you make these arguments for Will Hardy, it's mainly because of some of the things that he can do offensively. Does Taylor Jenkins not get credit for every single, even with A, B, C, D, who knows who on the roster this last season, they still were a respectable top third of the NBA defense. The previous 2 years,
birthday boy Jaren Jackson Jr. was the defensive player of the year.
Defensive player of the year. And they had top 5 defenses. Taylor Jenkins is solidified himself. Because when I think of top coaches, I'm looking at the guys, okay, who's the coaches that you look at and you say, oh, they're absolutely great at this. Eric Spoelstra is great at the adjustments. He can throw that matchup zone, at you where he doesn't need the best individual defenders and things like that. Like he can scheme good defense in that way. When you think of Mike Budenholzer, for example, since he loves Mike Budenholzer, you think of a guy who is strictly giving teams the mid-range shot. He's eliminating the 3, and he's going to have a rim protector at the rim to take away the 3-point shot and layups. They want you to take everything in the middle of the floor. That's the Mike Budenholzer strategy. When you think of Taylor Jenkins, you think of good, tough defenses. You think of offenses that get out into transition. And there are a couple coaches like he had Mike Budenholzer kind of high on this list. You know what Mike Budenholzer did that Taylor Jenkins also did? He had a top seed and had an early playoff exit. The Grizzlies were, quite frankly, the year against Golden State, they were a year early and they still advanced to the second round. The next year, yes, they lose in the first round. And you can debate whatever you want, but for the most part of that season, they were there because Steven Adams was on pace to reset the offensive rebounding record that he already had set the previous season. Like they had an identity, and losing Steven Adams shifted that identity. And losing Brandon Clark on top of that in March shifted that identity even more. The Grizzlies went to the playoff series against Anthony Davis with their 3rd center starting in the lineup. And then they lose against the Lakers teams. By the way, the Warriors, first team to beat the Warriors in the Western Conference playoffs in some years. A Lakers team that goes on to the Western Conference Finals. And now it's like, the Grizzlies. I mean, can you read it to us, Joe? What did he say about Taylor Jenkins? Because I know he touched on the lack of playoffs, but let the people know what he said.
This is just it's wild. It really is.
The people know. The people want to know, Joe. They want to know.
I have it in front of me here. Jenkins comes from the Mike Budenholzer tree, and again, this is from Sam Quinn's piece, ranking every NBA coach for 2024-2025 season. Yeah. Taylor Jenkins led the Grizzlies to back-to-back number 2 seeds. Snyder's work in Utah speaks for itself, but neither has had much playoff success, though injuries have ruined Jenkins' chances. Jenkins has had to do a bit more defensively. The Grizzlies are great at developing talent, but their front office's distinct drafting style plays a significant role here. The significant drafting style of completely bombing first-round picks?
The front office that just traded a first-round pick a year and a half into his career, right?
Or basically a ham sandwich.
Yeah, that's basically an admittance Taylor Jenkins deserves a little more credit here. And
it's wild.
And look, I'm tough on Taylor Jenkins. I think Joe is fairly tough on Taylor Jenkins as well. And when I say tough on him, like, we understand what Taylor Jenkins' strengths are, and we understand what his weaknesses are. We understand that this team has to become better offensively, or they're just not going to get to where they want to go. But what I also understand is you can throw Jaren Jackson Jr. and 4 guys who give you good effort out there defensively, and Taylor Jenkins is going to turn that into a top 12.
We've literally seen it happen
every year. Every single year, and even with limitations. We know Steven Adams had his limitations. We know Jaren Jackson Jr. As a rebounder has certain limitations. Ja Morant is not a world beater defensively. He's not a guy who's over there just setting the world on fire. Desmond Bane is improving as a defender, but Desmond Bane isn't like the best defender. He's not a great elite wing defender. Taylor Jenkins is making this work. And I think you got to give him some credit for that. He is definitely an elite defensive coach. Even though they're not a great offensive team, I will give them credit for this. They have an identity on their offensive end. That is something that you can't say. They're not just going up the floor, playing isolation ball and just saying, hey, Ja, make something happen. This guy, make something happen. They want to turn defense into offense, run in transition. Don't believe me. Outside of last season, if you go to the previous 2 years, they are at the top of the league in transition points. They're at the top of the league in turning steals and blocks into scoring. That's kind of been their identity. So Taylor Jenkins, all the great coaches have a good thing with establishing identities. He's done that. They've won in the regular season. Some other things have to happen for them to win more in the playoffs, but I don't think that kind of translates to a bottom half league, bottom half of the league coach. I mean, 17 is just otherworldly.
I'm putting Taylor Jenkins in front of Quinn Snyder. Again, Mike Malone, if I was locked on Nuggets, I think that's ridiculous to have him at 15. I would put Jenkins in front of Mike Brown. I would put Jenkins in front of Budenholzer. He was literally unemployed. Ime Udoka, what has he done with the Rockets? Will Hardy, apparently being 68, 90 or whatever it was. Let me pull it up real quick one more time. 68, 96 makes you a top 7 coach in the National Basketball Association. That's just ridiculous, Sam Quinn. Do better. Okay, please be better moving forward. Stop gaslighting me and Damichael Cole. We don't really appreciate it. Let us know where – I think Taylor Jenkins is a top 12-ish. Again, if you want to go a little bit behind that, you want to go a little bit in front, I think 12 is as low as I would possibly go. In my opinion, he's probably top 10. It's just wild to me how much people have forgotten what the Memphis Grizzlies are capable of. I read
what did Mike Miller say? What did Mike Miller say?
How soon they forget. Tom Ziller in his Good Morning It's Basketball this past Monday wrote he's pretty close to making the Grizzlies the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. And you know what? I think I'm going to do it out of spite too when we get into preview season. I'm going to go on a tirade and just be as obnoxiously biased as possible.
Save it for him, Joe. Don't give him the whole sauce. Save it for him.
Unbelievable. Anyway, let Damichael and I know in the comments. Hit us up on X. What are you thinking? Where do you think Jenkins goes? Even Anthony Sane. Sane and I have had our ups and downs over the years. Sane posted on X that this list is absurd. And you know it's bad because Anthony Sane trashes Taylor Jenkins all the time. Yeah, and he's like 17. So Anthony Sane gets it. Why don't you, Sam Quinn? We might have to have him on a future episode of Lockdown Grizzlies. Goodness gracious, that fired me up today. Whew, got to take a deep breath here. Got to get back into the swing. All right. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at Gametime. I'll tell you what Gametime won't do. They won't rank Taylor Jenkins number 17 among NBA coaches. I love going to live events, no matter what kind, live baseball games, football games, concerts, comedy shows. I love making memories with friends and family at these kinds of things. And, of course, Gametime is a great way to help you do that. I'm a huge fan of all the great curation over at Gametime picks, making it easier to save money on the events that I'm most interested in. They also have all-in pricing that you have to turn on in order to use the feature, but it shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees. At checkout, they have a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee as well, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Damichael, I feel better now after doing that read. I'm not as angry at Sam. And again, I like Sam, but just number 17, that's absurd. Let's talk about an article that is filled with more logic, and that is your article that came out over the Commercial Appeal, talking about the best backup options for Ja Morant. Again, I want you to, obviously, you wrote it, to have the chance to kind of break it down, explain it for our audience. Maybe give a smidge or a smackerel of where you're leaning in terms of who Ja's best option can be, or maybe we can just go down your list and maybe rank our confidence in those guys.
Yeah, let's get into it. So basically, check the story out in Commercial Appeal, and it's basically a story breaking down, like, to me, it's the biggest question mark for the Grizzlies this season. I mean, of course, we talk about, Zach Edey, but I'm fairly confident that Zach Edey can do some of the things that they need him to do, but we need to see it more with the backup point guards. And the reason that I say that, the 2 years where the Grizzlies won 50-plus games, they played 46 games without Ja Morant over those 2 seasons. 46 games without Ja Morant. Tyus Jones started in 45 of them. Want to take a guess at how many of those games were wins? 45 games now, so
I'm going to say 28 or 29.
And I'm glad you said that number. How about 32?
Ooh, I thought I was even going high there.
I know you did, because that's a very respect. 32 and 13 in Tyus Jones starts over the past 2 years. 19-4 the 2 years ago, when they pretty much couldn't lose when he was at point guard, when they won 56 games. And then the year after that, they were still respectable. I think 13-9 was the final tally then. But we've talked about it, Joe, like if Derrick Rose or if Scottie Pippen Jr. Has to step in, what are the odds that those guys can hold it down? And even beyond that, like, I don't even think it's about, them stepping in to start for him, because that's a tall task. But it's more about who can be the guy who can spell Ja Morant in those minutes when he's out of the game, because Ja's going to start he's probably playing around 32 minutes. There's 16 more minutes there for point guard play. And looking at the numbers, because I know a lot of people out there say, oh, you start Marcus Smart on the wing and you make Marcus Smart your backup point guard. Look, Joe, I'm not a proponent of that, and I know you aren't either.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
That's not our strategy. Marcus Smart was so good off the ball with the Grizzlies this past season, and I looked up the advanced numbers. You can check them out in the story to get the exact numbers. But I looked up some 3-man lineup things too, and if you take the 3-man lineup just to prove that point with Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane, they were -3 net rating over the course of the last season. They played a decent amount of minutes together, because if you remember, they started the season together when the Grizzlies started the season 1-8 and 0-6. So if you flip out, if you put in Ja Morant in that lineup and you take out Marcus Smart, then you get a +5 net rating. Just with that one shift. So with all that being said, I think the best way that the Grizzlies could go about this is you keep Marcus Smart off the ball. You prefer to have Desmond Bane off the ball too, because he's another solid option, I think. But if you bring Desmond Bane off the ball, the numbers also show that his shooting numbers tend to go down, and that's because the defense will be able to key on him more. He's on the ball, and it's just tougher to get easy looks for him. But what I found, Joe, is one, with Scottie Pippen Jr., the sample size isn't there. We haven't seen him play enough with the top guys yet, with Desmond Bane, with Jaren Jackson Jr., with the Luke Kennards of the world. So we're kind of in the clear there. But with Derrick Rose, I mean, stick with me, Joe, because I know, you're pretty much Derrick Rose 15th man territory. But I'm gonna say this. I would start the season based on what we know right now with Derrick Rose as the backup point guard, simply because when I looked at the net rating numbers, Derrick Rose 3-man lineups with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. was -0.1, which is basically even. And I think for your backup point guards in the NBA, you want your backup point guard to be able to hold the lead or extend it. And it seems like in that, because it was a decent sample size, when Derrick Rose was on the floor with Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., he was at least able to pretty much play even basketball. And I think that's a solid starting ground, considering he hasn't played a lot with them. He has to learn their games and all that. So that's what I'm going to say, Joe. I say you start the game, your starting lineup, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., all those guys. You bring Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. out of the game around 6-minute mark or so, and then Ja plays with a lot of the backups, right? Luke Kennard comes in, Brandon Clark, Ja runs with those guys. Then Ja comes out of the game, Derrick Rose comes in, and then Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. check in, and you stagger those guys with him. And if you put Derrick Rose in the game with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., I think you can kind of tread water. You could be just fine in that way. What do you think?
That is the only way that it works. The way that you just outlined it is literally the only way it can possibly happen. I hope Taylor Jenkins, I know he's listened in the past to Locked On Grizzlies.
Yeah.
He's probably enjoying the end of his offseason. I hope
he just had a birthday too. Yeah.
Shout out to Coach Jenkins. Happy birthday. That's the only way it works, in my opinion. You need to protect that backup point guard. And to be honest with you, I would say the same thing about Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
higher on Scottie Pippen Jr. than a lot of people. You're the highest on Scottie Pippen Jr. You are a very happy guy with both of these backup point guard options. You love them both. I think that either way, they have to be protected. If Ja Morant is your dude, I'm going to say that over and over again. This is your superstar, top 15 player in the National Basketball Association. You put him there with four guys and you let him spin, right? Him, Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., Brandon Clark. That small lineup, go freaking cook. You know what I'm saying? Like
throw Santi in there,
Throw Santi in there, absolutely. All right? He needs to go make that work. That's why he is paid what he's paid. That's why he's viewed how he's viewed. Dez and Jaren are top 40-ish players in the NBA, not top 15. You have both of those guys out there next to a Derrick Rose, who's your worst player of that list that I just rattled off. Scottie Pippen Jr. would also probably be the 10th guy of all the names. You got to protect that guy regardless of who it is. So the way that you just outlined it, I would sign off on. To me, it's the only way it works in that type of rotation cycle. I would be a supporter of that idea. Let Damichael and I know how you guys are feeling, whether it's in the comments or on X. I sign off on Damichael's plan there, protecting Scottie Pippen Jr., Derrick Rose by making sure they're next to Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. essentially at all times. Let us know how you're feeling about that in the comments. I do want to shout out Locked On NBA. Make sure you're checking them out after we're done here on Locked On Grizzlies, from West Coast to East Coast and everywhere in between. They do their research. They look up rosters and analysis. They're not going to rank Taylor Jenkins as the 17th best coach in the NBA. Nick Angstad, who's our boss over at Locked On, or at the Locked On Podcast Network, he's one of the hosts of Locked On NBA. He asked us about Timmy Allen yesterday, and nobody asked us about Timmy Allen, right? People,
Timmy Allen.
It's like Beetlejuice. Like you say his name 3 times and he appears. Timmy Allen is, a real basketball player. You know who knows that? The host over at Locked On NBA. So if you're looking for deep dive analysis, understanding of the game, check out Locked On NBA after we're done here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot, whether it's myself as a solo host, Damichael as a solo host, both of us together. We love FanDuel because it's America's #1 sportsbook. And this time around, we continue to have something that's a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, so coming up this weekend, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, once you have a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need to do this is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at literally any time. FanDuel is a great way to enjoy football season. Visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook today. Damichael, we'll get out of here on this. I'm terrible with birthdays. It's something that I could be better at. My nephew had a birthday the other day. Happy birthday, Bryce. And I completely missed it, to be honest with you. My wife made the call, and I was like, whose birthday is it? And she was like, seriously? I'm like, sorry. That's my bad.
That's why it's a partnership, Joe. That's why it's
and she's the better half. That's a fact. Jaren Jackson Jr. recently had a birthday in the last couple of days. So shout out to Jaren, 25 years old. I did mention on a recent episode how wild it is that Jaren is a veteran who's approaching his third NBA contract.
Does this mean he's not in that young and up-and-coming category?
I think 25 is the bottom. 25 is the very last year. You're no longer young and up-and-coming once you hit 25. And again, he's approaching his third NBA contract. You and I are both on the same page. We assume that's going to be a max deal, almost certainly with the Memphis Grizzlies. It's hard to see him leaving Memphis as long as the money's right. And I don't know why Memphis would not make the money right. At least if they're serious about paying the luxury tax and being willing to keep a good core together, they're about to put their money where their mouth is. when it comes to Jaren, the thing that I'm most excited about with him this coming season, partner, is the fact that he showed so much growth in his game in a lost year, right? Like the ability to be that isolation scorer. There were long stretches of the season where he was one of the best, if not the best, isolation scorers in the NBA. And we were just talking about rotations where it's Scottie Pippen Jr. or Derrick Rose, and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are going to have to carry the load. I am much more confident in Jaren doing that offensively at this point than I have ever been in my time following the Memphis Grizzlies. And I've followed Jaren Jackson's career from the beginning, from when he was drafted 4th overall by Memphis in the 2018 NBA draft to now. I've been there for Triple J's on rise and fall and ups and downs and ebbs and flows. I am more confident in his offensive game than I have ever been. And I think that makes him, even if defensive player of the year is a challenge because Victor Wembanyama exists now, I think there's an outside lane for him to be a third-team All-NBA guy because he has that two-way capabilities that he hasn't had before.
Yeah, it's been one of my biggest pleasures, like as a basketball head, not even like when I watch basketball, I'm really watching when you talk about like from the beat writer perspective, because I see these guys every day, pretty much like so you really get to see the little things that shift in their game, like the smallest of things. And with Jaren, the word was out around the league that he's trying to get to the left hand. He's trying to get to the left hand. He's going to turn over the same hand. The word was out around the league. And this past season, really over the last 2 seasons, we've seen the gradual growth, more in particular with him just finally being more aggressive. Last season, it was in spurts, like not this past season, the year before that. It was in spurts. You saw games like, I think it was the Orlando Magic. It was like rookie Apollo Banchero. He just like went at a bully ball, 30-point game. And then he'd have a couple games where he'd look like that. And then it was like March and April of that year going into the playoffs. And then it was the first game against the Lakers. You remember game 1? The Grizzlies lost game 1 against the Lakers, but the Lakers said it themselves. Like, we have no answer for Jaren Jackson Jr. right now. And that was also something that Golden State said, Draymond Green said in that playoff series at one point. But the answer is never been those teams finally learning to guard him. It's his aggressiveness changes when they start to play different defenses. But now you're starting to see it. Like this past season. And you talk about blessings in disguise, right? The blessing in disguise here was, Jaren, you can't defer to Dez. He's hurt. Jaren, you can't look for Ja. You got to do it. We need you to be the one to do it, because if it's not going to be you, it's going to be someone else playing in South Haven last week. And it was simple as that. And he had to be forceful. And there were games where he looked unstoppable, and there were games where he was clearly forcing shots. We saw that. But at the end of the day, the aggressiveness went to another level. You still want to see him grow as a playmaker. Like that's something we talked about a lot. He took some strides there, but and that's again another blessing in disguise. I mean, he was telling me like how these doubles were coming from different angles and blitzes and things like that he just hadn't experienced, because they're not going to do that to you when Ja is on the floor, especially when Ja and Dez are on the floor. But it's been one of my kind of favorite things, just watching the gradual. Like, I want to see what he's going to do next, because he's only 25. And it's been very clear from year 1 up to this point, and especially in my time covering the Grizzlies, like watching him over the last 3 seasons, each offseason, I'm looking at him come back the next year, and I say, that's a much better player than the year before. Sometimes it takes a while to see that in guys. Jaren, it happens pretty early. So I want to see what's next. Like, what is he going to do next? I think it'll probably be an efficiency thing when it comes to finishing around the rim. And, he's already great at drawing the fouls, which I think is one of his underrated, skills, because he's so strong and he's drawing a lot of fouls. He shoots good from the free throw line for, a big, it's going to be fun to watch him again this year, hopefully with a healthy Ja and Dez.
And he's just such an interesting person too, right? Like he drops rap albums in the off.
He's something, man. He's something.
He's a fashion guy. He's into style. He's a Renaissance man, right? The vice president of the NBPA, I believe. Yeah. He's just such an interesting individual. And he also seems to genuinely love Memphis, right? And, we've talked about that a couple of times here. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but in some ways it's that simple. Like if you come in, because Jaren's not your traditional Memphian, right? Like you don't think of a Memphian like Jaren Jackson Jr., but he is one, right? And that's a credit to the city of Memphis and that idea of if you love the city will love you back. And I think Jaren's a great, it's a really cool, it's different than like Tony Allen or Zach Randolph or somebody like that. But it's nice to see the city kind of live up to that mantra in somebody like Jaren. And I think that, it would be a surprise if Jaren is not here long-term. Something will have had to have gone wrong for that to be the reality. Thank you guys so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is appreciated. Tomorrow, another episode, right? We're back to 5 episodes a week here, partner. We talked about underrated aspects of Jaren Jackson Jr.'s game. I'm curious if maybe that could be an episode theme for us. Maybe look at some guys with some things that we're looking for that are underrated pieces of their game, whether it's Desmond Bane getting to the basket, Ja Morant creating defensive events, which is, that's the new gravity, right? The new shooter gravity is creating defensive events, whatever that means. Maybe we focus on some underappreciated portions of these guys' games on our next episode.
Yeah, it's that time of the year. Like we gotta buckle down here. We got about a week here until camp opens up. So yeah, I think we can definitely get into some of that.
It'll be a lot easier to do daily shows once training camp is open. But we only got a week or so to get through, and we appreciate you guys being with us. As long as Sam Quinn's around pissing us off, we're going to be able to put some good shows together. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA. Wonderful content from West Coast to East Coast and everywhere in between. Again, analysis, news, great interviews, all sorts of different stuff. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA as your second listen or second watch after Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Make Damichael and I and Locked On Grizzlies a part of your NBA consumption each and every time an episode drops. For Damichael, I am Joe. Stay locked in. We look forward to being back with you on our Wednesday edition. Thank you for being with us here on this Tuesday. Stay safe. Have a good one. This is Locked On Grizzlies.